being here. What happened in Spain, we've seen this play out over and over again in the West, in the U.S., too many times. And the fact that the police had been tipped off and nothing was done is chilling. I mean, is there anything that could have been done to prevent this?
We don't know that exactly nothing was done. Our security services, especially across Europe, are incredibly thinly stretched at the moment, and they are so because we've had such a great and vast swathe of migration that is bringing with it terrorism, radicalism, female genital mutilation, you name it. We're seeing this happening all across Europe at the moment. So I wouldn't attack the police over this, but the political will or lack thereof. There doesn't seem to be any political will to get a grip of this situation. There doesn't seem to be anybody that wants to stand up who is in a position to do so for controlled migration, for greater border security, greater checks on the people who are coming into Europe, and of course acting on intelligence when it needs to be acted upon. Here's the thing. We've now had, I think, 32 terrorist attacks or attempted terror attacks in Europe in 2017. You have a death toll reaching nearly 100, an injury toll of nearly 400, and it's really becoming quite an epidemic now. It will require a strength of political will that just isn't there at the moment. It will require people who care and have a vested interest in Europe's future and in the nation states of Europe's future. And as far as the Angela Merkels are concerned, as far as the Theresa Mays are concerned, I just don't think they've got it in them.
Well, and we just passed one of the bloodiest Ramadans in modern day history. And so, like you mentioned, there's been so many attacks, so many people dead around the world, not just in Europe, Middle Eastern countries, as well as the U.S. Now, this is a fluid situation. So, this is ongoing. Right now, there are 4 terror suspects dead, one's on the loose. And right now, the Spanish people, they're on edge because, this wasn't a lone wolf attack. This looks like, a major terror cell going on there. And they don't know how many other terrorists are lurking in the city.
Yeah, well, let's just be clear about this. There's no such thing as a lone wolf attack when it comes to radical Islam. That is a complete fallacy that is pushed upon us by the political left, by the political establishment. The same with the narrative that we so often hear after these attacks, that the attacker was quote unquote mentally ill. Well, if that's always the case, or is a case in so many of these situations, somebody needs to start looking into the correlation between mental health and Islam, quite frankly. And I'm not sure that's what they're really trying to say. We have in Europe now this fetishization of multiculturalism, the idea that people can do no wrong simply because they come from neighborhoods or countries or regions in the world which are either downtrodden, impoverished, or war-torn. And unfortunately, we know that the first generation of migrants of this particular persuasion, Muslim immigration we're talking about here, when they came over into the West, they actually wanted to assimilate, they wanted to integrate. But over the course of the last couple of decades, their children and their children's children, what we're seeing is a shift towards fundamentalism, towards radicalism, towards literalist interpretations of the most violent passages of the Quran. And again, I probably couldn't even say these things to you if we were in the United Kingdom. Somebody would report me for hate speech. Somebody would report me for a hate crime. I might get a knock on my door from the police. But no such sort of things happen when we're discussing the most heinous cultural elements that are coming over into our countries. I mentioned female genital mutilation earlier. There's a new case reported in the United Kingdom every 100 minutes. The Centre for Disease Control here in the United States has said up to 500,000 young girls are susceptible to this or in danger of this in the United States. And just to use an old trick that the left often uses when it's trying to push its progressive agenda, it's 2017, and that's what we're talking about in the Western world. It's outrageous.
Yeah, Raheem, you touched on something important here, is that when there is Islamic terror, they try to say, oh, well, that's just mental illness like anything else, but it's actually ideology. And, a lot of these orders come straight from the Quran. And we hear imams giving out some of the most vile hate speeches, and everyone just looks the other way. I mean, just a couple weeks ago in California, these imams were caught on video, even putting on their websites, they were telling their mosque goers to annihilate Jews, that that's okay. And so for some reason, the left just wants us to ignore this connection to Islam when it comes to radical Islamic terrorism. And in Spain, just a couple months ago, this number came out, they were monitoring over 1,000 people that could be potential terrorists. And we have that same problem here at home, where our FBI is monitoring around 1,000 terrorists. And do you think it's that we're just too PC to do anything about this? It's like we sit back, they're monitoring these guys, and some of these guys are committing acts of terror. And the FBI had been monitoring the terrorists from Orlando, the Pulse nightclub incident.
Well, it didn't help that you had a person in the White House for the last 8 years that had no inclination to tackle these things, and in fact was using the Council on American Islamic Relations talking points in his very own Cairo speech, that speech where he went on bended knee, I'm talking about Barack Obama, went on bended knee before the Muslim world and said, you know, we're sorry for being Americans, basically, and he literally quoting the Quran, selectively quoting the Quran, but literally quoting the Quran in that speech. You know, that last administration seemed more intent on helping Iran get its hands on a nuclear weapon than keeping Americans safe. It was, as far as I'm concerned, an act of serious treachery. You have an FBI, you have a Department of Homeland Security that is overstretched when it's dealing with radical Islam. You know, my sources in there say to me, oh, we have to focus on Salafism, we have to focus on Wahhabism, but there are other strains you need to focus on. The Bora community are the ones that perpetuate this female genital mutilation. The Deobandis are the ones that are behind the Tablighi Jamaat sect that radicalized Saeed Farouk in San Bernardino. That was not very long ago. We seem to have these very short memories, and we have very little in terms of resources to deal with these things. There are two major steps that need to be taken, and far more corollaries off the back of those. But one is to get your immigration system under control. The RAISE Act that President Trump is proposing does that in part, but the other part of it as well is to help the law, help the authorities investigate and identify who these people are, the mosques that are preaching radical hate. And not like, by the way, you mentioned that imam in California, when he issues an apology, the media fawns over him and calls it a heartfelt apology for calling for annihilation of the Jews. I don't think that does it. I don't think that's good enough. And you know, I suppose it's a little bit cliche to say it, but we have to support you know, our boys in blue doing the tough job of rooting out this radical Islamic terrorism.
Well, and you pointed out that the FBI can't do this all by themselves, and that's where people in the community need to speak out. A lot of people, you know, they say, if you see something, say something, but people are afraid to say something if that person happens to be Muslim because they don't want to be labeled as an Islamophobic person. So, you know, people need to step up in the community. Somebody must have known something in Spain. They must have, you know, been suspicious, but they were too afraid to come out. And just really quickly, we're almost out of time. I just wanted to get your reaction to Steve Bannon's exit from the White House.
Well, Steve is a happy warrior, and he's somebody that's, you know, very principled, and he believes in what he believes in, and he firmly believes in what the Trump base wanted all along. You know, border control, get a hold of the trade issues. So I think he'll continue to fight for those things, whatever he does next. I think it's a shame for your White House that whiteboard, that list that he kept in his office of great achievements and things to come, is now no longer in there. It's probably in the back of some removals van somewhere. But yeah, you know, onward and upward, and we'll see if this now mostly Democrat-dominated White House continues along the MAGA agenda.
Yeah. Any really quickly, any word if he's going to go back to Breitbart?
I'm not sure yet, but let me tell you something. There are a lot of people that inside Breitbart that really hope he does.
We will make America great again.